Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. While I was desperately chugging coffee in an effort to come up with new challenge videos, I got an email from a new free game called Once Human, which I immediately ignored because I don't have time to play a new game right now. Wait, what is this? Is this a Lovecraftian horror game? Wait, what do you mean it's the 5th most wishlisted game on Steam? And what is that haunting melody? Oh god, Miss Frizzle, no! So, after realizing that this game was way more up my alley than I had initially given it credit for, I decided to actually read the email. And wouldn't you know it, Once Human did the one thing I can't ignore. It dared me to challenge run the game. They wanted me to beat the game with low-tier weapons. You know, blast Cthulhu Bacterilia with nothing more than a basic pistol. Cute, but I don't need a gun to kill Cthulhu. In fact, I don't need a weapon at all. Hang on to your sanity, ladies and gentlemen, because today we're gonna find out. Can you beat the story bosses of Once Human with only consumables? Now, I know what you're thinking. This isn't Dark Souls, this is an open world survival game. There's no way you can do these kind of shenanigans in a game like this. Well, joke's on you, wizard-faced turtle that refuses to let me enter the Dreamlands, because this game, like every other game, has math in it. And a funny thing happens when a game gets bigger and bigger in scale. Balancing that math gets hard. Introduce people like me into that equation, and you're about to see how you can smash that math over your knee with the force of 1,000 suns. Oh, thanks to Once Human for sponsoring this video, by the way. You'd think that game companies would have learned by now that I just break everything I touch. Anyway, let's talk about the ins and outs of the game a bit before we dive headfirst into the weeds. Once Human is an open world survival game that can be played solo or co-op with friends, and involves making your own base, crafting all your own gear, and shooting all the monsters around you in order to get better loot, to make better bases, to make better gear, you get it. And if you like what you see and want to play Once Human for yourself, you can use the link in the description or pinned comment down below to download it on Steam for free. Okay? Okay. There's quite a few systems in Once Human that we'll need to explore, and we'll get to them when it's relevant. But suffice it to say that this isn't a simple looter shooter. Your build can be pretty much whatever you want it to be, with skills that focus on gathering, building, defending your base, or being in the front lines. Needless to say, I may have created a build that, when you put all the math together, kinda breaks consumables in a hilarious way. But hey, that's half the fun of making your own build. The other half is watching the developers scramble to nerf it before launch. So first things first, I have a bit of a disclaimer. Throughout the challenge run, you're gonna notice that my level is, well, it starts pretty high. That's because prior to starting the actual challenge run, I needed to figure out what exactly Once Human even is. There's not exactly a fleshed out wiki with build plans, or multiple videos detailing the bosses, since the game literally launched today. So I had to do my own research, which was good and fun. Honestly, it was just a joy to run around the world doing missions, making a sniper rifle that could one-shot minions from across the map, and then using that overpowered sniper rifle on harmless rabbits and deer. Because video games. But after playing the game normally for several hours, I had the horrifying realization that there was no way to create a new account. I mean, I'm sure all of you can make multiple characters, but I had to be given a whitelisted guest account that was a series of letters and numbers that make no sense just to get into the servers early. And they only give you one of those, so... But don't worry. After playing around with it for a bit, I found a way to reset all of my skill trees and more or less destroyed my base and inventory to start over fresh. The levels are technically still there, as are the skill points used to buy the nodes in the skill tree, but I'll only be unlocking things as they would have become available. So if you're trying this build for yourself, and let's be honest, there's at least one of you out there, I see you! Just know that everything you see on screen can absolutely be done with a brand new character. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into it. Welcome to the world of Once Human. You might notice that it looks pretty normal. You've got streets, vegetation, and even wildlife. Oh, whoops, forgot to get rid of one of my grenades. Here, let me just take care of that real quick. Carl, dinner's ready. As far as my current build goes, here's what we have. The starting armor from the tutorial, 2 crossbows that are literally the first weapons you ever craft, and a torch weapon that fills my melee slot. Unfortunately, it appears that you can't actually have 0 weapons equipped in this game once you fill those slots. So I decided to fill them with the simplest, worst weapons you can make. I promise I won't use them for anything, and in a few minutes, you'll see why I never need to. Moving along, let's talk about the mimetic skill tree and cradle. The cradle houses 8 passive skill slots that you can gain after killing bosses and clearing dungeons. After playing around for several hours, I've unlocked 3 of them, but for the purposes of virtually starting over, I've currently filled them with passives that I can't use with my build. As the game goes on and we kill bosses and clear dungeons, we'll act like I've unlocked them again and give them actually useful skills. But only then. As for the skill tree itself, there's actually a reset button. So I went into all the trees and removed every skill node that I unlocked. So that works out well. And with everything virtually reset back to 0, it's time to get started. First things first, we're gonna need some supplies. Luckily for us, we have a handy dandy rock that we can use to break down early game resources. I run around the starting areas, collecting gravel and wood, which simultaneously gives me experience. Get enough experience and you'll level up. And when you level up, you get several ciphers, which are the resource you use to unlock the mimetic skill tree nodes. To get us started, I'm going to unlock disassembly techniques, which teaches us how to build a disassembly machine, smelting basics, which lets me make smelters, copper bars, charcoal and glass, and copper pickaxes, which lets you make an actual gathering tool. Unlocking all of this only costs 4 ciphers, which you get from a single level. Not too shabby. You can also get experience from completing missions, which usually revolve around killing enemies and returning items to NPCs, or you can complete journey missions, which are basically just a list of things to do in the game that help you better understand how to play. It's super easy to do most of these, and therefore easy to level up with them. And if you're still struggling to level up, there's also these commission quests that you get from your bird. They're even easier than some of the journey missions and give boatloads of experience. So yeah, leveling up and getting ciphers for your mimetic skill tree is pretty easy. I run around the area, stealing random garbage from abandoned cars, collecting a good number of resources, and just overall enjoying the views, and eventually find a location that has a decent number of resources scattered nearby that would make a great place for a base. So I put down a foundation, craft myself a furnace, then craft a disassembler as well. This machine here is actually one of the most important machines in the game. It lets you take all the random garbage you find around the map and turn it into actually useful resources, like rubber and scrap metal. Meanwhile, the furnace here lets me make charcoal from the wood I've been collecting, which in turn will let me make copper ingots. But in order to make our next tool, the copper pickaxe, I also need some hide, which means we need to go hunting. And let me tell you, you do not want to chase after a deer with your bare hands. But after unlocking another level, we have another 4 ciphers to spend. And if we switch over to the crafting tree, we can unlock essential tools, which lets us build a supplies workbench, gear workbench, which will let us craft armor when we have the resources for it, and stoves, which will let us do some basic cooking recipes. I craft the supplies workbench, and craft your basic run-of-the-mill crude pickaxe for the sake of having a tool that isn't a rock. And when I test it out on this nearby tree, you'll notice that the tree isn't being chopped any faster, but the amount of wood I'm getting from it has dramatically increased. Which means less time spent chopping down trees and rocks. I also found a small pond while stumbling around in the dark and collected bucket loads of dirty water. Then, after crafting a stove with my mind, I take all of that dirty water and boil it, giving us essentially unlimited supply of fresh water to drink, solving our thirst problem for the remainder of the game. So that's one problem down. The next problem on our list is food and hide, which conveniently come from the same source. And wouldn't you know it, the supplies workbench has throwing daggers, a consumable that could be made with nothing more than wood and scrap metal. These things are going to be our bread and butter for the rest of the run. Not only because they're extremely cheap to make, but because of this little math equation here. This throwing knife does 488 damage plus 400% of your psi intensity stat, which, may I remind you, is currently sitting at 125 with completely untouched starting gear. So how much damage are we doing? Yep, that seems totally reasonable. Definitely not going to take complete advantage of that one. For frame of reference, my upgraded sniper rifle that had passive bonuses and mods giving an additional bonus damage wishes it could do this much damage, with a headshot. But this basic throwing knife that can be made in the first few minutes of the game is apparently an Eldritch God Killer. And you know what makes it even better? It can be recovered from corpses. So after crafting a mere 30 throwing knives, I think it's safe to say that we can conquer the world. So let's go do that, shall we? There's a small town called Thruwville nearby that's ripe with resources, and with our world-ending consumable in hand, I think it's time we paid a visit. Well, it's a bit spooky in here, but there should be plenty of things that aren't nailed down that we— Giant spider, kill it! Oh crap, okay, have another. Well, that was unexpected. Oh god, another one! So, while I steal literally everything that I can get my grubby little hands on, let's talk about the throwing knives. First, if you miss a toss, the knife is gone and can't be recovered. So we only have unlimited knives if we have good aim. Second, it appears that every enemy has its own defense stats, so while the damage of my knives is extremely high, there's a chance it'll do more or less damage than expected depending on the enemy type and where the knife lands. Hit an enemy in the weak spot, and the numbers go red, doing massive damage. Hit anywhere else, and you'll get white numbers and normal damage, with the occasional yellow numbers popping up, indicating a critical hit. The throwing knives have 2 modes. You can aim down sights for a slower, more accurate throw, or you can just pretend you're Dio and throw your knives with abandon. It doesn't seem to affect the damage, so it's more about accuracy and the situation than anything else. After pillaging the entire town for every resource I can find, and also discovering that I didn't actually need to build a stove if I didn't want to, I find all the rare chests hidden around the town, get some modifiers and a grenade that we'll look into in a minute, then scurry my way back to base. So, grenades. By the looks of things, they do about 200 more damage than my throwing knives do, but with the added benefit of hitting everything in a large radius. Which is cool and all, but here's the thing. Grenades are going to take another several nodes before we can even unlock the crafting station for them, and they're incredibly expensive to craft, and you can't recover them. So while I'd absolutely love to make this a firebomb run, chances are they won't be making an appearance. It's just not worth the effort. Now then, let's see what loot we got. We go to the disassembler and can see from the quick overview of the output that we now have access to a lot more materials. So with that, we've got some upgrading to do. The first thing I want is an explosive sack. When you reach level 5, you unlock a specialization for your character. I know we said we won't be using grenades, but in the off chance that I decide to use the myriad of explosive consumables this game has to offer, we might as well have a chance to salvage some of the resources I used to make them. I craft myself an explosive sack, upgrade to a copper pickaxe for better material gathering, craft a gear workbench so we can start making some armor, and begin looking at our options. I have a few uncommon armors unlocked from earlier exploration, but we're ignoring those for now. The rustic jacket is available from the start of the game, and while it doesn't seem to increase our stats any, the set effects are much more in line with what I need right now. Depending on how many pieces of the armor set I wear, we can get certain bonuses. If I make 4 pieces, we'll get faster movement speed, more HP, and faster gathering speed, which are all crucial this early in the game. However, if we unlock the basic gear node, we can get an even better armor set, the raid armor. This armor not only increases our psi intensity, which means it increases our damage, but the armor set skills offers a whole list of fun abilities, like more or less keeping that gathering speed bonus, increasing our carrying capacity, and oh look, increased throwing knife damage by 20%. Well, I guess I know what we're working towards. I use the next level to unlock bronze crafting, which will be important for later gear, bronze pickaxes, which will gather resources even faster, HP Recovery 1, which lets me craft activators, aka health potions, and the garage, which lets me craft vehicles to help me get around the map faster. And after slapping that bad boy down next to all my other garbage, there you have it, a motorcycle. It took a little more scrounging around to get what I needed for the motorcycle, but the base version is made of some very simple materials that we already have access to. So it didn't take long at all before I had all the parts. And the best part? All you do is press a button, and whatever vehicle is currently in your garage spawns in front of you. Now you do need to refuel it, and crafting fuel can be a bit of a pain, but you can also just use the portable mixed fuel that you find inside of abandoned cars. I'm sure it's not as efficient, but hey, less crafting means more throwing. Knives. And so, after taking a much needed road trip across the map to relax, I splashed around at the beach for a bit collecting seawater, because everything tastes better with salt. Also, can we just admire how pretty all this is? God dang. Now we could drive all the way back to base, but why do that when we can just teleport? And there you go, back at base, motorcycle happily back in its bed, and pounds of salt drying out on the stovetop. You know what? I think it's about time we put this build to the test. With the raid set unlocked and all the materials needed to craft the tier 1 version available, I made as many pieces of the armor as I could, realized I didn't have enough hides to make the pants and did what needed to be done to solve that little problem, recycled all of my old armor because we never look back on this channel, and then jammed my fancy new armor full of mods. Most of the mods I've been able to find up to this point have been pretty lackluster, but I do have a couple mods that increase weak spot damage, critical chance, or give me extra health, so I won't complain. And with that, it's time to go after the first story boss. Oh right, I haven't even mentioned the story. I don't want to ruin anything for you, so I'll just give you the spark notes. Back in the before times, a research group called Rosetta was studying an otherworldly substance they called stardust. Eventually, something went wrong, and the event known as Starfall occurred, unleashing mutations across the world and opening up rifts in time and space, letting monsters and old gods come through. There's all sorts of factions and side stories going on, with plenty of lore pages to find, and missions that involve helping the survivors around the area. But you didn't come here for the lore, you came here to watch me kill the old ones with a small piece of metal. On a more serious note, the lore is actually fun to read, and the missions are a pretty interesting diversion that give you all sorts of loot and experience, so it's all well worth your time. But in the interest of keeping this video relatively succinct and spoiler-free, just know that you can throwing knife your way through all of it with ease, and probably should if you're needing more levels. Anyway, I set up a temporary camp, which acts as a respawn point and lets you craft simple items, like throwing knives, then make my way into the monolith. Essentially, there are 4 big scary buildings scattered all over the map. Each monolith houses a portal, and an old one. Kill the old one, and we're one step closer to our goal. Oh, hey, a mini-boss. Each town tends to have 1 or 2 of these, and the monolith is no different. They always have massive pools of health and some pretty wild attacks, so you need to be— oh wait, he's dead already. Man, things start to get really weird the closer you get to the monolith. You've got transdimensional eggs, the final evolution of a businessman, and God, why does this game have mimics? But we've got a few special powers of our own. We can snap our fingers and see an outline of all the resources and loot around the area, and we also have a spectral raven thing that we can summon at will to glide down from any height. What was I doing again? Oh, right, the first story boss. Sorry, this game has a way of gently luring you off the main path. Happens every single time I make a goal for myself. But enough distractions. It's time to fight the first boss. And if I had to guess, I'd say it's right in there. Ah, the Ravenous Hunter. Looks like a good time. Apparently, we should be at least level 10 for this fight, and it's recommended that we have at least 2 players. Pfft, yeah, okay. There's also alternate versions of the boss for higher level players, at a hard and professional difficulty. But I think that's a challenge for another day. For now, let's just see what we're getting into first. They seem nice. Right then, time to get to work. The boss obviously has a minigun of some kind, so cover is going to be a must during the fight, which I immediately proved by getting shot with an entire clip of ammo. Good job, Lemon. Way to take your own advice. But once you actually hide behind some cover, all you need to do is wait for a lull in the waves of bullets heading your way, then pop out and throw a few knives in response. Do enough damage, and you'll stun the hunter, leaving it wide open for some very easy weak point hits. However, after a period of time, it'll become immune to your damage while it tries to run away to a safer distance, creating those ethereal egg spawners as it does. Smashing the eggs in their spawn is simple enough. I chose the flashier route and threw some of the explosive barrels located on the map at the problem, but you could just as easily throw knives at them with the same results. Destroy the eggs, and the hunter will return to the battlefield no longer immune to damage. Simply repeat the process, and you're good to go. And that's it. Between the excessive damage that my throwing knives do, and the boss being relatively easy to avoid, the boss goes down in less than 3 minutes, with only 22 knives used. 1 story boss down, 3 more to go. Hell of a good start. Back at base, I realized I goofed up and actually could have had even more damage if I had calibrated my armor. Essentially, armor and weapons upgrade in 3 ways. You can increase their rarity tier to boost all of its stats across the board, you can calibrate it to give it a little extra oomph, and you can find more blueprints around the map in chests and dungeons that will increase the stars it has. I was a bit limited on time when doing this challenge run, so I didn't have time to search all the dungeons and towns looking for similar blueprints, but according to the official website, having more blueprints lets you make higher quality equipment, which naturally means it has higher stats. And with the next boss looming on the horizon, I think it's time we made some upgrades. I unlocked Modification 1, which lets me upgrade my motorcycle, but quickly realized that I need tin to make some bronze bars. So it's time to go on an adventure. But first, we earned a cradle slot, which means we can get a passive buff. And what better passive buff to pick than Strategic Genius, which increases damage against old ones by 25% after using a tactical item. There's also the class specialization Throwing Dagger Bullseye. This one not only gives my throwing knives 30% more damage, but also 100% extra damage on my next knife if I've killed an enemy with one, which basically means I have a 130% bonus to my damage almost all the time. Yes, please. But we're not here for math, we're here for adventure! Heading a bit south on the map brings me to a higher level area, which in turn means that tin has appeared on the map. And with tin acquired, we can now make bronze bars. But why run all the way back to base when you can bring the base to you? Not only does this prevent the inevitable problem of needing more tin than I thought and having to come all the way back, but it also doesn't cost a thing outside of a 10-minute cooldown. So if you can find a location that isn't too wacky in terms of elevations, you can rebuild your entire base in all of 2 clicks. It's a beautiful thing. There's even a button for Eagle Eye View. God, I wish other survival base building games had this. But with bronze bars now cooking in the furnace, we can upgrade our pickaxe, giving us more efficient gathering and the ability to gather higher tier resources. Speaking of higher tier resources, let's go explore some more locations, because higher level areas means better goodies. Thankfully, my throwing knives are easily keeping pace with the enemy health pools, so that's not a problem. And while I'm sure the enemies hit harder than before due to my armor not being up to snuff, I'll never know, because everything dies in 1 hit. I am going a bit insane though, so that's not great. I unlock some more armor blueprints, then find something that I forgot to mention and haven't been using up to this point: deviants. Basically, in OnceHuman, you can capture mutations and then use them to your advantage. For example, this flame essence here can be put to work in my base, making it so that all the ore I'm gathering smelts much faster, which is useful, but there's better options out there. Back at base, I bring back my haul, which grants us access to a whole new tier of materials once disassembled, chow down on an apple in the weirdest way possible, upgrade my raid gear to tier 2, which dramatically increases my stats, calibrate my armor to upgrade my stats even further, upgrade my motorcycle so that it has better health, handling, speed, and fuel tank size, and then build an isolated securement unit, which is a fancy way of saying deviant prison. Once built, you can put any deviants you've found inside, taking advantage of their abilities. And while I have several that do things, the one that I default to is actually the festering gel, which you get from beating the first boss. Once inside their new home, you can sync up your backpack to the securement unit, which not only lets you use the deviant's powers on the go, but also lets you carry them around with you. Ah, look, he's happy. When used, the festering gel creates a small wall, which you can duck behind to avoid ranged projectiles. But the best part? Being next to this wall heals your HP and sanity. Never leave home without it. Right, I think that's enough upgrading. Let's go after the second boss. I craft another 100 or so throwing knives, just in case, then make my way to the second monolith to face off against the next boss. Unlike the last few places I've been pillaging, this one has actual humans, with guns. Not that it matters, but still, worth noting. Boss number 2, the Treant. It's a bit bigger than the last one. The first stage of the battle involves running around the arena, killing the tangled vines, which is easy enough so long as you hit their weak spot. After that, it's just a matter of throwing everything you have into the boss itself. If you can hit its head, you'll do extra damage, but considering we're doing nearly 2,000 damage with each toss, I wouldn't worry about that too much. But be careful. Not only does the Treant have several minions that guard it and get in the way of your attacks, but it also does a ground slam attack that is very hard to dodge, and a laser beam attack that takes you from 100 to 0 if you don't get out of it. Side note, found a new problem with the throwing knives. My throwing knives sit in my inventory in stacks of 10. However, when I use one of those stacks, I have to go into my inventory to drag out a new one, rather than it just restocking. Weirdly, there were other times where it felt like the game was pulling from my backpack inventory, so I have no idea what's going on here. Probably just a pre-launch bug. But in case it isn't, just be aware that can happen. But after going back and forth between killing the vines and attacking the Treant, it's over. After 5 minutes of pincushioning, victory is mine. 20 throwing knives. That's all it took. God, what is this run? I didn't even have my mods equipped. I forgot to reattach them after making my tier 2 armor, so I could have used even less. Well, guess we'll just keep pushing forward. I used my second cradle slot for Deadly Combo, which improves my healing medicine by 15% and makes the cooldown 30% shorter, then head north into more difficult portions of the map. I find new resources, like iron, unlock steel and all the equipment that uses it, upgrade my furnace so that it uses electricity now and can smelt even faster, then raid a nearby town for supplies. It's the same story as before. Mini-bosses die in a few well-placed hits, though they are getting a bit stranger the further I go into the game, but there's still yet to be a challenge that my throwing knives don't immediately disintegrate. And don't get me started on the normal enemies. We're doing upwards of 3,000 damage to them at this point. I don't think I've even seen half of the enemy attacks. You know the drill by now. Take fancy new loots, disassemble them into fancy new materials, use said materials to upgrade and calibrate my armor to tier 3. At this point, I was starting to wonder if there was something else I was supposed to be doing, so I dove into one of the dungeons, which are called silos. And yeah, not really a problem for the build currently. Roughly 4,000 damage seems to be enough to deal with anything we're encountering in here. Well, maybe the boss of the dungeon will be harder. Oh hey, I love this song. Well, look at you. Finally, something worth fighting. I was starting to get worried. For a minute there, it seemed like everything in this game was... Oh, false alarm. Well, dang it, that dungeon didn't even scratch me. I literally stun-locked the boss to death. Is this it? Is this all you can conjure once human? Well, if it is, we might as well push to the end. I put Sprint into my new passive slot, which gives me 5% faster movement speed and 15% less stamina cost when running, then run my happy self over to the third monolith and third boss. Araxium. Strange name for a lady behind a curtain. Ah, I think I get it now. So a few things about this boss. The first thing is that despite having a massive screen presence, all those spindly spider legs can't be damaged. So you have to be very precise with your throwing knives, which is a little difficult when she keeps moving all over the place. The second thing is that the throwing knives absolutely have a maximum range, and while it appears that they should be hitting the boss from here, we're gonna have to get closer. A problem that Araxium is more than happy to help me solve. However, this problem becomes a much larger one when the boss enters her immunity stage. Like the other bosses, Araxium can't be hurt until the spider eggs around the arena are destroyed. Initially, I was pretty confident. After all, hiding the eggs in the fog won't stop me from killing them in one hit. Wait, where are they? I've been running around for almost half a minute now, and I know I've covered the entire arena. Well, turns out that the boss thought it'd be funny to put her eggs around the outer rim. You know, at long range, where my knives can't reach. But despite this problem keeping me from actually clearing the eggs, I guess Amalgam is only immune for a certain amount of time. Because after desperately running around the arena trying to pop the eggs, she just decided to go back to her attack phase without prompting. Judging by my footage, she only stays immune for a minute, so you just have to survive for 60 seconds before pushing forward. Only one problem though. Because I was desperately throwing all my knives into the void, attempting to break those spider eggs, I kinda ran out of ammunition. Guess it's time to see how well my grenades do. As expected from our mathing earlier, grenades do about as much damage as my throwing knives, with the added bonus that they'll probably always hit. As for my Molotovs, they do less damage initially, but seem to rack up the damage so long as the boss remains in the fire, which unfortunately is highly unlikely. However, if she does remain in the fire, it looks like the fire starts to increase in damage, so that's pretty frickin' neato. As for the fancier explosives, it's a mixed bag. It appears they only explode when either an enemy is right on top of them or after a certain period of time, but when they do go off, they do some pretty hefty damage. The only problem is that they also do hefty damage to you as well. So if you happen to make the mistake of trying to see if you can pick them back up again just to get completely outplayed by the boss, you're gonna be in for a bad time. I hate to say it, but I think firebombs and firebomb accessories are out of the question. So I do the only thing I can. I make lots and lots of throwing knives. And after a healthy combination of small metal blades being thrown at high velocity and remembering that I have a little buddy who can heal me in the middle of combat, it only takes about 6 minutes and 28 throwing knives to take Amalgam down. Granted, it took a lot more throwing knives than that because I kept hitting her gangling gams, but still, one more story boss to go, one more iteration of upgrading, crafting, and exploring left. However, as I ransacked the latest area, I noticed something. The trash mobs around the town weren't dying in one hit anymore. And the mini-bosses, who have only been mildly irritating speed bumps up to this point, suddenly had the ability to down me in only a few hits. I think we might be in the endgame. And just like that, the false narrative I've been telling myself about my build being invincible is gone. It became very clear very quickly that I needed to play well if I was going to survive, and couldn't just rely on borked math to be the last boss of the game. I was going to have to clear more missions, loot more towns, and find and craft better armor blueprints if I was going to survive. Yeah, okay. In truth, I didn't do any of that. Rather than do what I was supposed to do and explore the game and all of its mechanics, I did what any self-respecting challenge runner would do and decided to slam my head against whatever brick wall was coming my way. I did upgrade my armor to tier 4, mostly because I wanted to keep one-shot killing everything, which is once again no longer a problem, but outside of that and crafting a backpack full of throwing knives, that's it. That's all the prep I care to do before facing off against the final boss. Time to show OnceHuman how a challenge runner breaks a game. Welcome to the 4th boss, the Shadow Hound. Whew boy, okay, this boss. Not only does it have a massive health pool, but it's constantly on the move, and seems like it bounces out of throwing knife range with every other toss. It also has a litany of moves that are hard to avoid, like this one here, where it makes a black hole to suck you in before stabbing you with goo, I think? It can also turn into goo, and will pull a shark attack on you if you're not paying attention, and also has a full-on charge attack that's pretty nerve-wracking. But our damage is still pretty high, and so long as we keep stabbing ourselves on repeat with health potions, I think we're gonna be fine. Or we would be if it weren't for this attack. I have no idea how to avoid it, and it deletes my health bar every single time. I'm not sure if it's actually a one-hit kill attack, or if my gear is just severely underleveled, but it seems like Doggo here does that attack instead of having an immunity phase. Unlike the other bosses though, it doesn't just go back and forth between the two phases. For example, the Shadow Hound can generate a shield that can only be destroyed by breaking its shoulder pads, and can even summon ranged minions that attack you from across the arena. The only saving grace I had for this fight was that despite getting absolutely obliterated by this move over and over again, he only used it 3 times. And OnceHuman gives you 3 revives throughout the fight. So as long as you play absolutely perfect, maximize DPS, and don't die mid-fight, maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to win through brute force alone. Okay, well, not exactly the perfect gameplay I was hoping for, but we still got this. Alright, Lemon, you're starting to worry me, buddy. Gonna need you to pick up the pieces here. Alright, just dodge the... No, I said dodge. Stop stepping on the spikes! Oh good, and now our health potions and Deviant Buddy are both on cooldown. Greed, give in to the greed. Hey, first try, not even close, let's go. I wasn't nervous, you were nervous, and there you have it. All 4 story bosses of OnceHuman defeated without weapons, at least at their base level difficulty. And with my lifelong goal of building a tower that's as high as the game will allow me to build already accomplished, there's not a whole lot left for this character to do. I mean there is, but we're out of time. Once Human definitely has a lot to offer. And when I was playing the game normally, there was absolutely a fun game cycle to be had with the constantly rising difficulty and gear crafting. Hell, I had to pry myself away from playing the game just so I could record the challenge run. And I barely even explored the base building, vehicles, and multiplayer aspects of the game. So there's definitely more fun to be had here. Imagine if I had actually gotten tier 5 armor, or a drone that attacked enemies for me, or a rocket launcher. Did you know there's rocket launchers in the game? But yeah, this game was a lot of fun. Can definitely see myself falling even further into it once I have free time in October? Probably October. But for now, I think there's one more thing I need to do. It's time for a field trip. Thanks again to OnceHuman for sponsoring the video. Sorry about breaking your game. I mean, I'm not, I had fun doing it, but I am sorry about giving you more work on launch day. Can't wait to see throwing knives nerfed into the dirt. If you want to play OnceHuman, you can use my link in the description or pinned comment down below to download it on Steam. It's free to play, can be played with your friends, and if you use my code down below, you'll even get some special rewards. It's throwing knives. You just get throwing knives. Nah, I'm just kidding, that's a lie. But wouldn't that be hilarious? In any case, that's all I've got. Take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.